Knicks 2 and the Rockets nothing. Morey off the spin. Shot deflected short by Ewing. Off the steal, Ewing gets it back.
Mouse in the house, give me the rock. If it's a big player, I'd either post him up or face him up and, either fake, shoot my shot fake, drive around him, or shoot my face-up shot. I think that was a great feeling to me when I had it rolling.
Patrick Ewing names 5 players he respected, and when he says one of them was his GOAT, he's not just throwing around hype. This is a man who survived the most brutal era in NBA history, where the paint was a war zone and respect wasn't given. It was earned through blood and broken bodies. These 5 names aren't just a list. They're a map of what it took to be great when basketball was a gladiator sport, and what Ewing had to face every single night just to survive. Quick thing, if you're enjoying this already, hit the hype feature and give this video some hype. It helps more than you know, and we've got some serious stories coming your way. So let's talk about what respect actually meant in Ewing's world. This wasn't the era of social media shoutouts or summer workout videos together. The golden era of big men from the mid-80s to the late 90s was defined by one thing. If you wanted respect, you had to take it. The center position was the sun that everything else orbited around, and guys like Ewing lived in a combat zone every night. Physicality that would get you suspended today was just Tuesday back then. Elbows in the post, 7-game wars that felt like actual wars, and a code that said, you don't break ever. When Ewing names these 5 players, he's not listing Hall of Famers for fun. He's naming the guys who tested every part of him, physically, mentally, and skill-wise, and forced him to be perfect or get destroyed. Each one represents a different kind of nightmare he had to overcome. And the crazy part is, these weren't just opponents. They were the architects of his greatness, and he was the architect of theirs. Number 5, David Robinson, the Admiral. If you're wondering what made Robinson special in Ewing's eyes, it's simple. Speed. Robinson was 7'1", built like a bodybuilder, but ran the floor like a guard. In an era where most centers were lumbering giants grinding it out in the half-court, Robinson was a gazelle. He'd finish an alley-oop on the break, sprint back to block your shot, then beat everyone down the floor again before you even processed what happened. For Ewing, who played a methodical, physical half-court game, facing Robinson meant playing at a pace that felt wrong. It was uncomfortable, and that's exactly why Ewing respected him. But it wasn't just the athleticism. Robinson had this duality that made him dangerous. On the surface, he was the Admiral, polite, articulate, a Naval Academy graduate who carried himself with discipline and class. Ewing was the Hoya Destroyer, scowling, sweating, intense, always looking like he wanted to rip your head off. Total opposites in personality. But Ewing knew that underneath Robinson's gentleman exterior was a killer who wanted to win just as badly. That contrast made Robinson fascinating, because you couldn't read him the way you could read other guys. Ewing credits Robinson, along with Hakeem and Shaq, for making the 90s the hardest era to play center. He said facing those 3 was what made the job brutal, and Robinson's accolades back that up. MVP in 1995, Defensive Player of the Year in 1992, a scoring title in 1994. Those weren't just numbers to Ewing, they were benchmarks of the level of competition he dealt with every single night. And then there's the Dream Team connection. Robinson and Ewing were teammates on the 1992 squad, the greatest basketball team ever assembled. They were the 2 primary centers, rotating responsibilities, anchoring the defense for a roster that had Jordan, Magic, Bird, and everyone else. That shared experience mattered. Ewing saw Robinson's work ethic up close, the hours he put into his body and his game, and it created a bond that went beyond their NBA battles. They weren't just rivals. They were brothers in service to something bigger. Their head-to-head matchups were always defined by Robinson's transition scoring versus Ewing's half-court dominance. The 1993-94 season is the perfect example. Robinson won the scoring title that year, dropping 71 points in the final game to edge out Shaq, while Ewing led the Knicks to the finals. They were the 2 best centers in the league that season, along with Hakeem, and every time they matched up, it was a chess match. Robinson had the efficiency edge because he could get easy baskets in transition, while Ewing had to grind for every single point in the Knicks system. But that's what made it beautiful. 2 completely different styles, both elite, both demanding respect. Number 4, Shaquille O'Neal. When Shaq entered the NBA in 1992, Patrick Ewing was already an established veteran, a Dream Team member, widely considered the best center in the Eastern Conference. And then Shaq showed up and shocked the entire system. He was 7'1", 325 pounds of explosive power that the league had never seen before. Ewing called him a different beast, and that's not exaggeration. Steve Kerr, who played in that era, put it perfectly. He said while Hakeem Hakeem had finesse and Robinson had speed, Shaq had a physical advantage that was just unfair. He was much bigger than Hakeem, much thicker than David, much faster than Patrick. That combination was terrifying. What Ewing respected most about Shaq was that he didn't wait for the torch to be passed. He tried to snatch it. Ewing said he respected the way Shaq came into the league and demanded that space, and that's the key word, demanded. For Ewing, facing Shaq became a test of pride. It was the classic old lion versus young lion dynamic. In the early to mid-90s, Ewing's Knicks were the gatekeepers. Shaq's Orlando Magic were talented, sure, but if they wanted legitimacy, they had to go through the bruising Knicks. And Ewing took immense pride in holding his ground against a guy who was younger, stronger, and more explosive. The language of their rivalry was pure force. Ewing said you had to be ready for a physical war every night with him, and he meant it. Unlike Robinson or Hakeem, where finesse and skill played major roles, playing Shaq was a wrestling match. It was bodies colliding, elbows flying, and trying to survive the avalanche. Shaq's dominance was so overwhelming that teams literally constructed rosters just to deal with him. 3 or 4 bodies whose only job was to foul Shaq and make him earn it at the free throw line. That's the kind of impact he had, and Ewing respected that level of dominance because it forced the entire league to adapt. Shaq has returned that respect deeply. There's a famous moment where Shaq tears up talking about Ewing, saying he doesn't get enough credit, and was one of the hardest players Shaq ever had to guard. Shaq admitted that playing against Ewing, Hakeem, and Robinson in his early years was the crucible that turned him into a champion. Those battles forged him, and he knew it. Now, while Shaq eventually surpassed Ewing in championships and accolades, their head-to-head record during Ewing's prime shows a fierce competition. Shaq has the career edge in overall wins, but in individual matchups during the mid-90s, Ewing often outskilled the younger O'Neal by using his jump shot to pull Shaq out of the paint, a tactic Shaq absolutely hated. Ewing made him work, made him uncomfortable, and that's all he needed to prove. He wasn't backing down, not to anyone. Number 3, Alonzo Mourning. This one's different. Mourning is the only player on this list that Ewing calls my brother, and that's not just a figure of speech, it's lineage. Both of them were molded by John Thompson at Georgetown University, part of a brotherhood defined by Hoya paranoia, a siege mentality that emphasized defense, education, and relentless toughness. Mourning grew up idolizing Ewing. As a foster child in Virginia, he kept a poster of Ewing on his wall and wore jersey number 33 specifically to honor him. When Mourning arrived at Georgetown, people called him the next Patrick Ewing. For Ewing, seeing Mourning was like looking in a mirror or looking at a younger sibling. He took Mourning under his wing, mentored him on what the NBA was really like and what it meant to be a superstar center. But here's where it gets intense. Despite that brotherly love, or maybe because of it, the on-court rivalry between Ewing's Knicks and Mourning's Miami Heat was arguably the most violent in NBA history. From 1997 to 2000, the two teams met in the playoffs 4 straight years, and these weren't basketball series. They were street fights. Ewing explained the dynamic perfectly. He said, "We talk all the time and have been the best of friends, but when it came to stepping out on that court to play him, the communication stopped." That's the compartmentalization Ewing respected most. Mourning wouldn't hesitate to elbow him in the throat to get a rebound, and Ewing wouldn't hesitate to do the same. Love off the court, war on it. Their head-to-head stats reflect that sibling rivalry. In 22 regular season meetings, they split the wins evenly, 11 and 11. Ewing averaged 24.1 points and 10.8 rebounds. Mourning averaged 20.9 points and 10.5 rebounds. The margins were razor thin, always. The rivalry peaked during the 1997 playoffs, famously marked by a massive brawl where P.J. Brown flipped Charlie Ward, leading to suspensions that arguably cost the Knicks the series. Through all the chaos, the suspensions, Jeff Van Gundy clinging to legs, Ewing and Mourning remained the eyes of the storm. Two brothers waging war out of respect for the game and for Georgetown. That bond, that ability to love someone and still try to destroy them for 48 minutes, that's what made Mourning special to Ewing. Number 2, Michael Jordan. If Ewing's rivalry with Hakeem was about technical skill and Mourning was about brotherhood, then his respect for Michael Jordan is rooted purely in the psychological and competitive realm. Ewing doesn't just call Jordan great, he calls him a killer and an assassin, and that terminology is specific and deliberate. When Ewing analyzes modern players, he contrasts Jordan with LeBron James. He says LeBron is a brilliant facilitator who had to learn how to be an assassin, but Jordan possessed that predatory mindset from day one. It was inherent, unteachable, and that's what Ewing reveres most. Jordan didn't just want to beat you, he wanted to break you, humiliate you, make you question why you even showed up. The narrative of Patrick Ewing's career can't be told without Michael Jordan, because Jordan is the author of its greatest tragedy. Ewing led the Knicks to prominence during a time that coincided exactly with the Chicago Bulls dynasty. Jordan was the bar everyone had to try to reach, and despite Ewing's effort, that bar proved too high. The Knicks and Bulls met in the playoffs 5 times during Ewing's prime: 1989, 1991, 1998, 1992, 1993, 1996. Ewing lost every single series. Everyone. The 1992 and 1993 series are legendary for their physicality. The Knicks, under Pat Riley, adopted a strategy of bruising intimidation. They wanted to physically punish Jordan every time he touched the paint. Ewing was the anchor of that defense, the giant waiting at the rim. But Jordan never backed down. Ewing said people don't realize how hard we fought. And the fact that Jordan could endure that assault, the Jordan rules defense, and still dominate, that earned Ewing's absolute admiration. There's another dimension to the Ewing-Jordan relationship that often gets overlooked. The Dream Team. For the first time, they weren't adversaries, they were allies, training together in Monte Carlo and Barcelona for the 1992 Olympics. It was during those closed-door practices that their bond of respect was truly cemented. The famous greatest game nobody ever saw, an intra-squad scrimmage in Monte Carlo, had Ewing and Jordan on the floor together in various lineups. Ewing witnessed firsthand Jordan's maniacal practice habits. Jordan treated a Tuesday morning scrimmage with the same intensity as Game 7 of the finals. That's not normal. That's obsession. Ewing also got a front row seat to Jordan's legendary trash talk. He said Jordan and Larry Bird were equal in their verbal assaults, noting that Jordan used to talk so much trash that Ewing could do nothing but join him. That shared experience created a fraternity. They were the elite of the elite, and Ewing saw that Jordan's public persona was backed by private work. To Ewing, Jordan was the best in his era because his work ethic matched his talent. That's why when Ewing says Jordan is his GOAT, it's not just about rings or stats. It's about the totality of what Jordan represented. The mindset, the relentlessness, the refusal to accept anything less than total dominance. Number 1, Hakeem Olajuwon. This is the rivalry that defines everything. Ewing has said Hakeem was the best he ever played against, and their battles from college all the way to the pros were legendary. What makes this unique is that it started before the NBA, rooted in collegiate basketball history. Their rivalry is the foundation of the modern center position, and it began on April 2nd, 1984, at the Kingdom in Seattle during the NCAA championship game. This matchup was more than a game. It was a clash of philosophies. Ewing represented Georgetown, a program built by John Thompson on suffocating defense, intimidation, and discipline. Hakeem represented Houston's Phi Slama Jama, a high-flying offensive juggernaut that played above the rim. Georgetown won that game 84-75, securing Ewing's only NCAA title, but the impression Hakeem left was permanent. Ewing recalled, "Jesus, God, this man is so strong and so agile. He's an amazing competitor." That early encounter set the baseline for mutual respect that only deepened over 2 decades. They were the twin pillars of the 1984 draft class. Hakeem went first, Ewing went first in 1985, and their careers ran on parallel tracks, always destined to collide at the highest level. If 1984 was the prologue, the 1994 NBA Finals was the masterpiece. With Michael Jordan on sabbatical playing baseball, the NBA had a power vacuum and the Knicks and Rockets filled it. This was the first finals to feature 2 elite centers since Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, and it was a 7-game war. The tactical battle was fascinating. Ewing, suffering from chronic knee tendonitis that was robbing him of lateral quickness, relied on his massive strength, positional discipline, and a lethal mid-range jumper. Hakeem, in his absolute prime, unleashed the full arsenal of the Dream Shake, a series of pivots, fakes, and spins that made traditional post defense useless. The stats from that finals tell the story. Ewing averaged 18.9 points, 12.4 rebounds, and 4.3 blocks per game. Hakeem averaged 26.9 points, 9.1 rebounds, and 3.9 blocks, shooting 50% from the field. Both turned the paint into a no-fly zone, but Hakeem's efficiency was the deciding factor. Ewing's critics point to his shooting percentage in that series, 36.3%, but deeper analysis reveals the truth. He carried an immense defensive burden and set a finals record at the time for total blocks in a series with 30. He single-handedly disrupted the Rockets' interior offense, but Hakeem's ability to create shots out of nothing, using his agility to counter Ewing's strength, tipped the scales. Ewing admitted in the finals he was just a different beast. "I was like, this is a different Hakeem right here." What solidifies Hakeem's place at the top of Ewing's list is the parity of their career interactions. In the regular season, they faced each other 28 times. The record? A perfect 14-14 split. That statistical symmetry reinforces Ewing's view that Hakeem was his true peer. Unlike his record against Jordan, which was dominated by losses, or against younger centers where age played a factor, the Ewing-Hakeem dynamic was a balanced scale. Ewing respects Hakeem because Hakeem required perfection. Any slip in concentration, any laziness in footwork, and Hakeem would exploit it with a spin move or a fadeaway. To Ewing, who prided himself on preparation and intensity, Hakeem was the ultimate exam, the test that never got easier. When you analyze these 5 players together, a pattern emerges about what Patrick Ewing values. His respect isn't given to guys guys who had it easy or put up empty stats. It's reserved for those who possessed three traits: physical fortitude, the ability to withstand the brutality of 90s basketball, competitive malice, the killer instinct that seeks to destroy the opponent, and technical or athletic excellence, the skill to elevate the game beyond brute force. Shaq and Mourning brought the physicality, Jordan and Hakeem brought the killer mindset, Robinson and Hakeem brought the technical and athletic brilliance. Ewing's list is a self-portrait. By defining the greatness of his opponents, he defines the magnitude of his own burden. He didn't play in an era of diluted talent. He played in a Shark Tank. He faced the greatest scorer ever in Jordan, the most skilled center ever in Hakeem, the most powerful force ever in Shaq, the most athletic center ever in Robinson, and the most intense defender ever in Mourning. Ewing's legacy gets unfairly reduced to his lack of a championship ring, but through this lens we see a different truth. His career was a continuous two-decade war against the greatest collection of talent the NBA has ever seen. That he stood toe-to-toe with them, earning their fear and their respect, is a championship in itself. Ewing said it best: greatness isn't built in isolation, it's cultivated in fierce competition. These five men were the cultivators of his greatness, and he was the cultivator of theirs. So drop a comment and let me know who you think Ewing respected most and why. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe, because we've got more stories like this coming your way.
Particularly coaches, because I think at times coaches would look like somebody's looking over my shoulder. When you hire someone,
It's an honor for the few select players here just to have an opportunity to play in a game. When you think about all the basketball players in the United States and all over the world, and when you have this...
He was my GOAT. Those words from Jerry West carry weight that most people will never understand. The man whose silhouette became the NBA logo, the very symbol of basketball itself, didn't hand out respect easily. He represented something greater than just a great player or a smart executive. He represented a gold standard. The people he chose to respect lived by the same obsessive pursuit of excellence that defined his entire life and career. Jerry West lost more finals than he won. 9 times he reached the championship stage in his playing career. Only once in a single magical season did he bring home the trophy. That 1969 victory came with the bittersweet honor of being named Finals MVP on a losing team, a singular and haunting distinction. That pain, that heartbreak, shaped everything he became over the decades. It taught him what true greatness really meant and how to recognize it in others. This video reveals the 5 players Jerry West respected above all others, not because of statistics, but because they reflected his obsession with excellence. They understood what it meant to chase perfection. If you're loving stories like this, give this video some hype. It really helps share these legend stories. Now let's go back to 1996 when West made a decision that changed the NBA forever. The first player West truly respected like a son was Kobe Bryant. This wasn't just about basketball mechanics or statistics. This was deeply personal. West saw something remarkable and special in a 17-year-old kid that nobody else saw. It was pure obsession. It was the same fire that burned inside West himself, pushing him toward relentless excellence. In 1996, the Lakers needed something special. West brought in Kobe from Charlotte, but getting him would cost Vlade Divac, a beloved center. Divac was in Europe when he got the news. He said it felt like being hit with a hammer. He threatened to retire rather than go to Charlotte, but West believed in Kobe so much that he convinced Divac to accept the trade. During a 20-minute workout, West became convinced that Kobe was the most talented prospect he had ever witnessed. West described the decision as a no-brainer in hindsight. It opened up cap space for Shaq and set the stage for the dynasty that would win 3 championships. West saw in young Kobe the same insatiable desire to be the best that burned inside him, with relentless intensity. West would later say that watching Kobe grow and evolve was like watching his own child grow up. Kobe's legendary Mamba mentality was there from the very beginning. West noticed that Kobe trained with intensity that went far beyond normal levels. He constantly looked in the mirror and self-assessed. West understood that kind of thinking because it was the same thinking that had kept him playing through pain for 14 years. Fear of failure. West called it his greatest motivational tool. He saw that same fear in Kobe. It drove the young player to work obsessively. In 2004, when Kobe considered leaving to play for a younger West with the Memphis Grizzlies, West talked him out of it. He told him he belonged in Los Angeles. West put Kobe's future ahead of his own desire to coach him. That's the kind of respect West had for Bryant. It was deeper than basketball. When Kobe died in 2020, West's grief was real. He said he felt like he had lost a son. He said Kobe was the greatest Laker of all time. West had watched a scared teenager become one of the greatest players the game has ever known. But while Kobe was the player West loved as a son, Michael Jordan was the player West identified as the gold standard. This was different. This was not a father-son relationship. This was respect built on perfection. West never admitted that anyone was better than Jordan. He famously said Jordan was the greatest player he had ever seen. Period. No qualification, no caveat. What made West respect Jordan most was his uncanny ability to play both offense and defense at the absolute highest level simultaneously. West himself had been a legendary defensive hawk during his playing days. He had little patience for offensive stars who didn't contribute defensively or help their teams on that end. But Jordan was completely different. Jordan absolutely dominated on both ends of the floor. He controlled the pace. He controlled the psychological tenor of the game. He made opponents understand that he was the superior competitor. West believed that Jordan ended the GOAT debate before it even started. Before Jordan, people debated whether Russell or Chamberlain or Johnson or Bird was greatest. But Jordan's dominance settled the question permanently. He won back-to-back three-peats separated by a hiatus in his prime. He did it through physical talent and mental obsession that West believed was unsurpassed. The fear of failure that West talked about, Jordan had it too. West said it drove him and drove him and drove him. He saw that same internal engine in Jordan. He could see it in the way Jordan deconstructed opponents. There was no question about who was better. Jordan made it undeniable. This standard that Jordan set became the benchmark for how West evaluated every player who came after. When West scouted prospects, he looked for what he called Jordan-esque traits: mental obsession, defensive versatility, the willingness to do whatever it took to win. This is why he had pursued Kobe so aggressively. Kobe had explicitly modeled his game and work ethic after Michael Jordan. West wasn't just building a team, he was building a culture of excellence that stretched from Jordan to Kobe to the next generation. But as time went on, West's perspective on greatness evolved. The game changed. The way you could be great changed. And that's when he had to defend someone people were criticizing. He had to defend LeBron James. West's defense of LeBron was one of the most striking things about his late career legacy. While critics focused on LeBron's finals record, West said that was grossly unfair and ridiculous. He knew why. He had lived through it himself. West made it to 9 finals and won only 1. Those losses continued to haunt him throughout his life. He compared losing the finals to looking at candy behind a store window. You can almost touch it. You can almost reach it, but you can't get there. That pain is indescribable. Getting to the finals is hard. Just getting there is an accomplishment that only the absolute best can achieve. Losing in the finals isn't a failure of character. It's facing the best team in the world on the biggest stage. West said that by his 3rd finals loss, he didn't want to play anymore. It took so much out of him emotionally. When he looked at LeBron's finals record, he didn't see weakness. He saw a player who had reached that mountaintop multiple times. He saw a player carrying teams that weren't the favorites. He saw a player who did everything. LeBron wasn't just a scorer, he was a rebounder, he was a passer, he was a defender. West called him a Swiss Army knife, a player who could do anything the team needed. West respected that versatility. What West really admired about LeBron was his exceptional basketball intelligence. He said if you don't respect what LeBron James does on the court, you don't truly know basketball. And that powerful statement was coming from someone who had forgotten more about basketball than most people would ever know in their entire lives. LeBron's uncanny ability to read the floor, to understand positioning, to know where the play was going before it happened, it was the kind of intelligence that only the greatest players ever possessed. West's defense of LeBron was personal because he understood the pain of finals losses. He had felt that same pain. He wasn't going to watch people dismiss LeBron's greatness because of a number in a win-loss column. West recognized that LeBron's contribution to his teams was so massive that the only way to judge him was by looking at the complete picture. And when you looked at the complete picture, LeBron James was one of the greatest players of all time. But before LeBron and Jordan, before Kobe, there was someone else who stood beside Jerry West. Not as a rival, but as a brother. His name was Elgin Baylor. And Baylor taught West about respect in a way that went beyond basketball. Elgin Baylor was the first true high flyer in the NBA. He added a vertical dimension to the game that literally had not existed before. He was the blueprint for players like Julius Erving and eventually Michael Jordan. West maintained that Baylor was the most talented player of his era. He called him the magician with the basketball. What West respected most about Baylor wasn't just his talent, it was his character. Baylor and West formed a duo that endured the pain of losing multiple finals together. That shared trauma created a bond closer than any championship could have created. West said that Baylor was a prince of a man. He never said derogatory things about others, even when the competitive nature of the game provoked anger. That kind of composure in a sport that demands intensity, that's something special. West came from a small town in West Virginia. He admitted he was naive about racism until he saw what Baylor had to face. He watched as a proud man confronted discrimination and responded with dignity. West learned that true greatness wasn't measured just in championships or statistics. It was measured in how you carried yourself. In 1959, there was a pivotal moment that defined the relationship and shaped how West viewed human dignity. The Minneapolis Lakers were traveling through a segregated country. When they arrived in Charleston, West Virginia, Baylor and the other black players were denied service at a local hotel and restaurant. Baylor refused to play in the game that night. He said he was not going to perform like an animal in a circus after being denied basic human dignity. That courageous stance left a lasting and profound impression on West. West admired Baylor's dignity and class. He recognized it as a seminal moment in the history of the league. This wasn't just about basketball. This was about moral courage. West respected that as much as any jump shot or defensive play. Years later, when Baylor served as general manager of the Los Angeles Clippers, West was a vocal advocate for his friend. He expressed disappointment over the way Baylor was mistreated, over the way he was denied decision-making power, over the way he wasn't given the dignity he deserved. To West, Baylor was a better man off the court than on it. That meant everything. As West moved further into his career as an executive, the game kept changing. West kept learning. In his later years with the Golden State Warriors, he became the primary advocate for Stephen Curry. His respect for Curry was so profound that he threatened to resign his job if the team traded away Curry's partner, Klay Thompson. In 2014, the Warriors were seriously considering trading Klay Thompson to Minnesota for Kevin Love. At the time, Kevin Love was one of the premier power forwards in the entire league. On paper, it looked like an obvious upgrade that would strengthen the team significantly. But West saw something that others completely missed. He saw that the NBA was moving toward a pace and space revolution that would change everything about how the game was played. And Curry needed a very specific kind of partner to thrive in that new system. West argued that Klay Thompson was the perfect player for Stephen Curry. Klay was a lockdown defender who didn't need the spotlight. He would defend the other team's best player and then step aside and let Curry lead. Klay gave Curry oxygen. He gave him room to operate. That symbiotic relationship was what made the system work. West took a hard line. He told the front office that trading Thompson would be an enormous mistake. When they didn't listen, he threatened to quit. He threatened to walk away. That kind of conviction, that kind of willingness to put his job on the line for his belief in a player, that's the ultimate form of respect. The Warriors listened to West. They kept Klay. Over the next several years, they won 4 championships. The dynasty that defined an era was built on West's vision and his respect for what Curry could do when he had the right pieces around him. West's respect for Curry went beyond the basketball court. He was captivated by Curry's character and humility. Here was a superstar who, despite his talent and success, remained loyal to his friends and relationships. He was humble about his achievements. He let his game speak for itself. West had come to understand something over his decades in basketball. The gold standard wasn't about one specific way of playing. It could be the aggressive style of Jordan and Bryant. It could be the intelligent style of LeBron James. It could be the humble style of Stephen Curry. What mattered was the character underneath. It was the commitment to excellence, the respect for the game, the way you carried yourself off the court. West's respect for these 5 players, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Elgin Baylor, and Stephen Curry, wasn't just focused on their professional accomplishments and accolades. It was deeply about what those accomplishments revealed about their character. It was about their obsession with excellence. It was about their dedication to being the best, not for glory or money, but because excellence was the only acceptable standard. These 5 players represented different eras of basketball history. They represented distinctly different playing styles and approaches. They represented different ways of being great in the sport. But they all shared something incredibly important and defining. They all had obsessive work ethic that drove their careers. They all had commitment to being complete, versatile players who could do whatever their team needed them to do successfully. They all possessed exceptional basketball intelligence, and they all had moral dignity that transcended the basketball court itself. West's legacy isn't just the symbol that became the NBA logo. It's not just the legendary teams he built over his executive career. It's the standard he set. The standard that says greatness isn't just about stats and championships. It's about character. It's about obsession. It's about understanding that the pursuit of excellence is a never-ending journey. It's about respecting the game enough to give it everything you have, every single day. The players Jerry West respected most were the ones who carried his fire forward. They were the ones who understood that being great meant being obsessed with being great. They were the ones who understood that losing in the finals hurt more than anything else because they cared so much about winning. They were the ones who never settled. They were the ones who always asked, "Can I be better?" And in the end, the 5 players Jerry West respected weren't just the greatest to ever play the game. They were the individuals who allowed West to see his own insatiable desire reflected in the next generation. They ensured that the standard he set as a player would endure long after he left the court. They made sure that the logo didn't just represent a basketball player. It represented an ideal, a standard of excellence that would inspire players for generations to come. Because Jerry West didn't just respect great basketball players, he truly respected great people who happened to play basketball at the highest level. And those people are the ones who made the game fundamentally better. They're the ones who will be remembered not just for what they won, but for how they played the game and how they carried themselves through life.
The way he been playing, I looked at his stats, and everybody was calling, asking questions about LeBron and Kareem. And I did the 20 years of 20 years. 20 years of Kareem, 20 years of LeBron. LeBron played 82 games, 10 times out of 20. Kareem played 6 out of 20. So there's a lot of comparison. One had a sky hook, one guy who was just a leader of all men on the court. When they always make that comparison, who you like, LeBron or Mike? I says, Frosted Flake, cornflakes. Mike, LeBron. So LeBron got no sugar, Mike got the sugar. So the sugar I ain't have, I'm LeBron because I was cornflakes. So it's always gonna be a comparison.
He was unstoppable. That's what Charles Oakley said about one of the 5 players he truly respected. And when a guy nicknamed the Last Enforcer says that, you listen. Because Oakley wasn't just some role player. He was the bodyguard, the protector, the guy who made opponents think twice before stepping into the paint. And in today's NBA, people say respect is dead. Everyone's friends now. Everyone hugs after the game. Nobody scares anybody anymore. But Oakley, he played in an era where respect wasn't given. It was earned through blood, sweat, and broken bones. So when he names 5 players he actually respected, it means something. These weren't just talented guys. These were warriors who passed Oakley's test. The kind of test that measures killer instinct, durability, and the guts to dominate when everything is on the line. And before we dive into who made this legendary list, real quick, if you're feeling this old school respect conversation, hit that hype feature and give this video some love. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you this kind of content. Now, Oakley's list isn't what you'd expect. He doesn't rank players the way ESPN does. He doesn't care about your advanced analytics or your Twitter debates. Oakley lived in the trenches. He spent 19 seasons protecting superstars, enforcing the no layup rule, and making sure nobody got an easy bucket in his paint. He ranks 4th all-time in personal fouls, and he wears that stat like a badge of honor. Those weren't mistakes. Those were messages. Every hard foul was a warning. Every chest bump was a reminder. And when a man like that tells you who he respects, you're not getting a popularity contest. You're getting a masterclass in what greatness actually looks like. This is a guy who battled in the paint against every legend of his generation. He went to war with Patrick Ewing in practice. He faced off against the bad boy Pistons when they were at their most vicious. He saw firsthand what it took to survive and thrive in the most physical era the NBA has ever known. And through all of that, through all the battles and all the blood, only 5 players truly earned his respect. Oakley's philosophy is simple but brutal. Greatness isn't about being nice. It's not about highlight reels or Instagram followers. It's about impact. It's about showing up every single night and putting fear into your opponent's heart. It's about having a signature move so deadly that defenses break down just thinking about it. And it's about fulfilling your role, whatever that role is, and elevating everyone around you. That's the lens Oakley uses. And through that lens, 5 players rose above the rest. These weren't guys who just put up numbers. These were players who changed the game itself. Players who made the league adjust rules because of their dominance. Players who carried teams on their backs through impossible circumstances. Players who, when the game was on the line and everything mattered, delivered every single time. That's what Oakley values. That's what he saw in these 5 legends. He wasn't impressed by potential or promise. He was impressed by results, by consistency, by the ability to perform under pressure when the entire world was watching and waiting for you to fail. That's the standard. That's the bar. And only 5 players cleared it. Number 5 on Oakley's respected list is Kobe Bryant. And right away, you know, this list is different. Because Oakley doesn't just say Kobe was great. He says Kobe was better than Magic Johnson. Let that sink in for a second. Magic, the guy with 5 championships and the smile that lit up the forum, gets ranked below Kobe in Oakley's eyes. Why? Because Oakley values the killer over the nice guy every single time. Oakley put it bluntly. Kobe is better than Magic. If I would compare anybody to Michael Jordan, it would be Kobe Bryant. That's not a casual comment. That's Oakley saying Kobe inherited the Mamba mentality straight from Jordan himself. The footwork, the fadeaways, the crossovers, the sheer offensive versatility. Kobe could score from anywhere, anytime, against anyone. But it wasn't just the skill, it was the mentality. Kobe didn't want to be your friend. He wanted to destroy you. He studied film like a scientist. He worked out like a madman. He showed up to practice ready to prove he was the best player in the gym every single day. And Oakley saw that. He saw a guy who refused to take nights off, a guy who played through injuries that would have sidelined softer players for weeks, a guy who demanded excellence from his teammates and wouldn't accept anything less. Magic was brilliant, no question. But Magic was a passer, a facilitator, a guy who made everyone feel good. Kobe made you feel terror. And to Oakley, that terror is what separates legends from icons. Kobe earned his respect by being willing to kill you on both ends of the floor, just like Jordan did. When Kobe stepped on the court, defenders knew they were in for a war. And more often than not, Kobe won that war. He didn't just beat you, he broke you. He made you question whether you even belonged on the same court. That's the Mamba mentality. That's what Oakley respects. That relentless, unforgiving pursuit of victory no matter what it cost. Number 4 is Wilt Chamberlain. And this is where Oakley's philosophy really shines through, because Wilt only won 2 championships. In the modern debate, people would hold that against him. They'd say Bill Russell won 11, so Russell is better. But Oakley doesn't play that game. He straight up says Bill Russell is nowhere near his top 10. That's a controversial take, but Oakley backs it up with cold logic. Russell averaged 18 points per game. He played on stacked teams loaded with Hall of Famers. Wilt was a one-man wrecking crew. Wilt scored 100 points in a single game. Wilt grabbed 55 rebounds in one night. Wilt's statistical records are so absurd they feel like myths, but they're real. And Oakley respects that kind of dominance. He says it plainly. You gotta have Wilt in there. People need to stop with how many rings players got and look at the impact they had on the floor. Oakley isn't saying championships don't matter. He's saying they're not the only thing that matters. Wilt changed games single-handedly. He was so physically dominant that the league had to change rules because of him. They widened the lane. They added offensive goaltending. They did everything they could to slow him down, and he still put up numbers nobody has touched since. Oakley even has a personal connection to Wilt's greatness. Oakley once grabbed 36 rebounds in a game, and he says that's the closest anyone in the modern era has come to Wilt's rebounding records. That tells you how untouchable Wilt's dominance was, and it tells you why Oakley respects the big man. Because Wilt didn't need a super team. He didn't need load management. He showed up, played every minute, and imposed his will on the game. That's the kind of impact Oakley values. That's the kind of dominance you can't fake. Wilt was a physical specimen unlike anything the league had ever seen. 7'1", 275 pounds, and faster than guards. He was unstoppable. And that's exactly what Oakley said about him. Unstoppable. No scheme could contain him. No defender could match him. The only thing that kept Wilt from winning more championships was the fact that he was playing against loaded Celtics teams. But on an individual level, Wilt was the most dominant force the game has ever known. Number 3 is LeBron James. Now, this might surprise you, because Oakley is Michael Jordan's best friend. Oakley was Jordan's bodyguard in Chicago. He protected Jordan from the Detroit Bad Boys. He was there for Jordan's broken foot, for his early struggles, for his rise to greatness. And yet, Oakley puts LeBron in his top 5. Why? Because Oakley saw something in LeBron early, something most people missed. Oakley started mentoring LeBron when LeBron was just 16 years old. He brought teenage LeBron, along with his mother and Maverick Carter, to Chicago to watch Michael Jordan play pickup games at Attack Athletics. Oakley wanted LeBron to see what real intensity looked like. Jordan didn't let the kid play that day. He didn't want to risk LeBron getting hurt against seasoned pros, but LeBron watched. And Oakley says he saw the awe in LeBron's eyes. He saw a kid who understood the standard he'd have to reach, and LeBron reached it. Oakley's respect for LeBron is rooted in one thing above all else: body of work. Oakley says, Mike, if LeBron never won a ring, he would still be in my top 3. That is how much he meant to the players in the game. That's massive, because Oakley is saying LeBron's impact goes beyond championships. LeBron made every team he joined an instant contender. He played at an elite level for over 2 decades. He stayed healthy, stayed dominant, and stayed relevant in a way no one else has. Oakley also respects LeBron's leadership style. He contrasts it with Jordan's. Jordan didn't care if his teammates got shots. Jordan was hunting buckets, hunting wins, hunting championships. LeBron makes sure everyone eats. Oakley jokes that if you're open, LeBron will pass your son the ball. That's a leader of men. Now, Oakley still calls LeBron a nice guy compared to Jordan and Kobe. He uses a cereal analogy. LeBron's got no sugar, Mike's got the sugar. I'm LeBron because I was cornflakes. Translation, LeBron is the foundation, the essential player. But Jordan had that extra sweetness, that killer edge that made him unstoppable in the clutch. Still, Oakley's respect for LeBron is clear. Durability, consistency, and impact. That's what LeBron brought, and that's why he earned his spot. LeBron proved you don't need to be the killer to be great. You just need to show up every night for 20 years straight. You need to make everyone around you better. You need to carry franchises that had no business competing and turn them into championship contenders. That's what LeBron did. That's what Oakley respects. Number 2 is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and this pick is pure Oakley, because Oakley believes you cannot have an all-time list without a dominant center. The game was built in the paint, it was won in the paint, and Kareem was the king of the paint. Oakley's respect for Kareem comes down to one thing, the skyhook. Oakley calls it the ultimate weapon, and he's right. The skyhook was the most unstoppable move in basketball history. Defenders knew it was coming. They studied it, they prepared for it, and they still couldn't stop it. Kareem's release was too high, his footwork was too perfect, his touch was too soft. It didn't matter who was guarding him. The skyhook was automatic. Oakley points out that everyone tries to be like Mike or be like Magic, but nobody has successfully copied the skyhook. That's because it takes a level of skill and consistency that most players simply don't have. Kareem played 20 seasons, he won 6 championships, he's the all-time leading scorer in NBA history, a record that stood for decades. And he did it with one move, one beautiful, unstoppable move. Oakley also connects with Kareem on a personal level. Oakley ranks 4th all-time in personal fouls, right behind legends like Robert Parrish, Karl Malone, and Kareem himself. That shared statistic isn't a mark of dirty play. It's a mark of physicality, of career spent in the most contested area of the court. Oakley sees Kareem as the gold standard for big men. He groups him with other special centers like Moses Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Shaquille O'Neal. But Kareem is the pinnacle, and Oakley subtly critiques the modern game for moving away from traditional post play. The skyhook is a lost art, and Kareem was its greatest master. That's why he earned Oakley's respect. That's why his legacy will never fade. Kareem represented everything Oakley values: consistency, durability, a weapon nobody could stop, and the ability to dominate the paint for 2 full decades without ever slowing down. Number 1 is Michael Jordan, and honestly, this was never in doubt. Oakley calls Jordan the undisputed GOAT, not just because of the 6 championships or the 5 MVPs or the scoring titles, but because of the killer instinct, the mentality, the aura. Oakley saw it up close. He was there in Chicago when Jordan was still learning how to lead. He was there when the Pistons were beating Jordan up, trying to break his spirit with their Jordan rules. And Oakley made sure nobody touched Jordan without paying a price. That's how their bond started. Oakley became Jordan's enforcer, his protector, his big brother, and Jordan never forgot it. During the 1985 to 1986 season, Jordan broke his foot. He was voted into the All-Star game anyway. And instead of bringing a girlfriend or a family member, Jordan brought rookie Charles Oakley. He wanted to expose Oakley to the league's elite. He wanted to inspire him. That tells you everything about their relationship. Oakley saw Jordan's greatness before the world did, and he watched it grow. Oakley tells a story about Jordan getting pulled over for speeding. The cop recognized him and just said, "Oh, Mr. Jordan, we're sorry. Just slow it down. We'll see you next week." Jordan drove off without a ticket. Oakley uses that story to illustrate Jordan's impact. Jordan commanded a room, a stadium, even the law, just by being himself. That's not talent. That's presence. That's power. And on the court, Jordan had that same effect. Oakley faced Jordan in the playoffs 5 times with the Knicks, lost every series, and he never stopped respecting Jordan's ability to take the shot, to close the game, to break your heart when it mattered most. Oakley's famous quote sums it up. "Mike was better than Kobe. Mike and Kobe will kill you. LeBron is a nice guy, but nobody ever said Michael and Kobe are nice guys." That's the difference. Jordan didn't care about being liked. He cared about winning, and he was willing to do whatever it took to win. That's why he's number 1 on Oakley's list. That's why he always will be. Jordan defined what it meant to be clutch. He defined what it meant to be fearless. And he did it all while carrying himself like the greatest player who ever lived, because he was. Jordan turned basketball into art. He made impossible shots look routine. He made winning look inevitable. And when the game was on the line, when everyone in the building knew Jordan was getting the ball, he still scored. That's greatness. That's the killer instinct Oakley talks about. That's why Jordan is number 1. So there you have it. Charles Oakley's 5 most respected players: Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, LeBron James, Wilt Chamberlain, and Kobe Bryant. This isn't a list built on stats alone. It's a list built on respect, real respect. the kind earned in the trenches, in the paint, in the final seconds of a close game. Oakley's philosophy is simple. Greatness isn't about being nice. It's about having a killer instinct. It's about durability. It's about having a move or a mentality that breaks your opponent's will. These 5 players had that. They didn't just play basketball, they dominated it, they changed it, they forced the league to adjust to them, not the other way around. And in Oakley's eyes, that's what separates legends from everyone else. These 5 weren't just great. They were built for war, and that's why they earned the respect of the last enforcer.
Being in the NBA was a pleasure for me because we saw these guys on TV when we were in high school and college, and here I was out here playing with these guys. I mean, I was excited just to be out there. That's when I first started picking up the basketball. But basketball wasn't my favorite sport at that time. Football and baseball was what I really loved. Basketball was third. You know, how it got twisted around, you know, probably because I started growing.
Bob McAdoo picks his 5 favorite players, and honestly, he was his own GOAT. But here's the thing. Bob McAdoo was statistically monumental, yet historically marginalized. He averaged 30 points and 15 rebounds in one season, a 3-time scoring champion. Yet when the NBA created their 50 greatest players list, Bob was initially left off, forgotten. That snub stung deeply. But that is absolutely exactly why his top 5 favorites matter so much. This list is not random nostalgia. This is a powerful statement. Bob did not just watch basketball evolve, he lived it. He played against these legends, with them, and coached alongside them. Superstar in Buffalo, journeyman in the late 70s, searching for respect, redemption story on Showtime Lakers, architect of championship culture as an assistant coach for nearly 2 decades. His favorites are Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Pat Riley, Julius Erving, and Kevin McHale. These 5 pillars supported his journey from misunderstood scorer to revered champion. They validated him when the rest of basketball did not. What ties them together is class, professional excellence, and dignity in how they carried themselves. Bob has drawn parallels between basketball and tennis, citing Arthur Ashe, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal. He believes greatness should carry dignity and ambassadorial spirit. That philosophy shaped every choice on this list. Quick thing right here. If you are enjoying this old school basketball and legendary stories of athletes who carried themselves with grace, use the hype feature and give this video some hype. That support helps reach more basketball history fans. Now let us dive into these 5 figures in reverse order, starting with number 5, Kevin McHale, the torture chamber master, the most surprising entry on Bob's list given the fierce Lakers-Celtics rivalry, but real recognizes real. Bob's admiration is rooted in pure craft and technical mastery of the game. McHale had devastating low-post moves that seemed incomprehensible to opponents. Up and unders, drop steps, long-armed finishes that appeared impossible to stop. Bob often defended McHale in critical finals matchups in 1984 and 85. These were brutal physical battles. McHale said something Bob never forgot. People forget how dominant Bob was. This mutual admiration is built on shared experience and respect between fierce competitors. Both were unstoppable offensive forces in their era. Both accepted bench roles for the greater good of their championship teams. Both understood that winning was bigger than personal statistics or accolades. Bob marvels at McHale's footwork as an artisan craft. In an era when big men relied purely on power and strength, McHale relied on leverage, angles, and precise pivot feet. Bob's game was built on finesse, shooting, and basketball intelligence. He appreciated McHale's approach completely. McHale represented one of the last true low-post masters, a dying art in modern basketball. They also share sixth-man heritage that bonds them deeply. Before McHale became a full-time starter, he was the league's premier bench player. He won Sixth Man of the Year in 1984 and 85. Bob occupied that same celebrated role for the Lakers in those exact years. They felt a kinship, overqualified reserves who swung the balance in the greatest rivalry in sports history. A bond was forged in the trenches of finals basketball, where only elite players compete. McHale played on a broken foot in the playoffs. Bob played through various injuries in his later years. Both displayed the grit that binds warriors together. McHale's toughness resonated deeply with Bob. To Bob, McHale wasn't just a Celtic rival. He was a warrior worthy of the highest praise and respect. Number 4 is Julius Erving, Dr. J, the stylistic soulmate and parallel pioneer. Julius occupies a uniquely special place in Bob's heart, a contemporary who revolutionized the forward position parallel to Bob's own innovations. While they played in different leagues during the 1970s, they were spiritual siblings in the art of scoring. Both did things ahead of their time. Both challenged fundamental assumptions about what positions could be in basketball. Julius said something that stuck with Bob forever. Bob was doing things in the 70s that people people think are new today, playing as a big man with genuine guard skills. Julius recognized this immediately because he was doing the same from the wing position. Both were prototypes of what would later be called a unicorn, players who could handle the basketball, shoot distance, finish at the rim with grace, regardless of listed height. Bob sees in Julius a mirror of his own struggle to be appreciated in the 70s, a decade often overlooked by basketball historians. The respect between them is deepened with the 1976 ABA to NBA merger context. When Irving arrived in the NBA, traditional purists were skeptical. Did ABA flash translate to the real league? Bob recognized immediately that Julius was the absolute truth, a fellow creative genius stifled by outdated positional labels. Bob's admiration is deeply tied to his concept of class. Like Arthur Ashe in tennis, Dr. J was an ambassador of dignity, a regal demeanor that elevated the entire sport of basketball. Irving's influence on basketball's cool factor is genuinely undeniable. As the league moved away from the plodding 60s basketball to high-flying 80s game, Irving was the poster child. Bob felt deep kinship with this new brand. They were the vanguard of the skill over size revolution. They faced each other in seminal finals moments. The 1980 finals featured Irving's famous baseline scoop shot. To Bob, Irving was ballet in basketball, pure artistry. The 1983 finals saw the Sixers sweep the Lakers. Painful for Bob, but it solidified his respect. Seeing Irving finally capture his elusive NBA ring, Bob understood the profound relief and validation from championship glory. It mirrored his own 1982 journey. Bob sees Julius as the gold standard for small forwards, just as he sees himself as a pioneer for the stretch four. Number 3 is Pat Riley, the architect of reinvention. Riley's inclusion shows his profound impact on Bob's life during and after his playing days. While Riley was a teammate of champions in the 70s, his ascension to Lakers head coach in 1982 altered the entire trajectory of basketball history. Bob describes Riley as a genius who fundamentally changed Lakers culture. Riley inherited a talented but undisciplined basketball team. His solution was rigorous, almost militaristic approach to conditioning and preparation, a philosophy that broke many players but forged Bob into the ultimate sixth man. Riley's methods were complex and demanding, practice sessions often more grueling than actual games, demanding unprecedented levels of body fat control and cardiovascular fitness. Bob notes something important about this partnership. When I got to Pat, a lot of players couldn't take it. I didn't have a problem with it. This alignment of values was absolutely crucial. Bob trained under legendary Dr. Jack Ramsey in Buffalo, already believed in Fitness Foundation, but Riley took it to an entirely new level. He extended Bob's career by forcing him to maintain a 25-year-old body into his 30s. Riley's obsession with preparation resonated with Bob's entire approach to scoring. Both shared a fundamental belief: fatigue is the enemy of execution. The Riley camp became legendary throughout the league, a filter separating true contenders from pretenders. Bob's thriving in this environment earned Riley's eternal respect. Riley once said Bob was the best sixth man. For Riley, the bench was a strategic weapon. Bob was its devastating warhead. Convincing a former MVP to come off the bench is fraught with ego-driven perils. Riley managed this brilliantly. He framed the role not as demotion, but as specialized duty essential for championship. He asked Bob to be a superstar for 20 minutes a night. Bob accepted because he trusted Riley's basketball vision. I had no thoughts about coming off the bench, Bob reflected, but I dealt with it because I had never been on a championship team. Riley honored this sacrifice by ensuring Bob played all crunch time. The bond extended decades beyond the Showtime era. When Riley built Miami Heat culture, he brought Bob as assistant for 18 years. Riley trusted Bob completely to instill the Heat culture, a direct descendant of the 80s Lakers preparation program. Bob won 3 more championships in 2006, 12, and 13. In Miami, Bob became the keeper of the flame, the man who told LeBron and Dwayne, "This is how we did it with Magic and Kareem." Riley provided essential structure to Bob's talent. Magic provided the spark, Riley built the engine. Number 2 is Magic Johnson, the catalyst of resurrection. If Kareem was the mountain Bob had to climb, Magic was the wind at his back propelling him upward. By late 1981, Bob was viewed by most as damaged goods, a high-scoring malcontent bouncing between multiple teams. Critics labeled him a cancer to basketball. They ignored the franchise dysfunction and blamed Bob instead. It was Magic who saw something completely different. Magic said something that changed everything about Bob's life. There wasn't a player in the league who could stop Bob McAdoo when he got hot. He was a superstar who sacrificed for the team. Magic famously lobbied for the Lakers to acquire Bob. He called Bob the missing piece. For Bob, being courted by the game's most charismatic young prince was genuinely transformative. Magic did not see a washed-up gunner. He saw a weapon that could make Showtime virtually unguardable to opponents. The relationship was defined by unique motivational dynamics. Magic, despite being significantly younger, commanded the floor with authority demanding excellence from everyone. Bob recounts a pivotal moment early in his Lakers tenure when he missed several easy shots. Magic approached with a smile and steely warning. You miss again, baby. It ain't coming to you no more. I got them up out their seat. You supposed to send them go crazy. That's right, knock that shot down so they can go crazy. This interaction encapsulates why Magic is a favorite. Magic simplified the game for Bob. No complex system to memorize, no hierarchy to navigate. Only the mandate to run and finish. Magic would say, I got clever on my right. I'm getting ready to do something. Using Bob's nickname, this clarity allowed Bob to shed the burden of carrying a franchise. The 80s Lakers were a symphony orchestra. If Magic was the conductor, Bob was the first violin. When Kareem rested, the Lakers sped up. Magic and Bob formed a devastating transition duo. Bob's ability to run like a guard despite standing 6'9" made him ideal for Magic's bounce passes. Bob credits Magic with creating the easiest baskets of his life. This gratitude is profound from a 3-time scoring champion who fought double teams in Buffalo and New York. Magic's playmaking genius unlocked Bob's transition game unlike any point guard could. The 1982 and 85 championships are Bob's crowning achievements. He draws a direct line from those rings to Magic's influence. The 85 title against Boston was particularly sweet. It vindicated Showtime against East Grit. To Bob, Magic represents the ultimate teammate, the superstar who makes everyone else better. This ability to elevate the collective is why Magic sits firmly in Bob's pantheon of respect. Number 1. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The rivals turned teammates and historical competitors. To understand Bob's deep reverence for Kareem, travel back to the mid-1970s, a period where these two titans stood completely alone at the sports summit. The mid-70s were defined by statistical warfare between Buffalo's McAdoo and Milwaukee's Kareem. Bob cites Kareem as the toughest competitor he ever faced in basketball. This comes from attempting to defend against the most unstoppable shot in basketball history, the skyhook. In 1973-74, young Bob exploded onto the basketball scene, averaging 30.6 points per game, capturing the scoring title. Yet in MVP voting, he finished second to Kareem. Despite Bob's Braves winning 42 games to the Bucks' 59, this dynamic forged deep competitive respect between them. The admiration stems from Kareem's complete inevitability. Bob, a varied scorer relying on jump shot and explosive first steps, marveled at Kareem's mechanical perfection. His skyhook was impossible to stop. No defensive scheming could neutralize a weapon released from such high apex. For a defender like Bob relying on quickness and timing rather than brute bulk, Kareem represented the ultimate puzzle, one that could not be solved, only endured. The relationship demonstrates mutual professional validation. Kareem said something validating Bob's entire career. Bob McAdoo was the greatest shooter I ever played with. He was a pure scorer who could get his shot off against anybody. From the all-time leading scorer, this validates everything. Bob has argued he is the godfather of the modern stretch big man. In an era when centers stayed in the paint, Bob pulled from 18 feet, ran the floor in transition, took defenders off dribble. To have Kareem acknowledge him not as just a scorer, but as the greatest shooter is ultimate vindication against critics. Their relationship shifted dramatically when Bob joined the Lakers. The basketball world viewed this union with skepticism. Could two ball-dominant players coexist? The answer lay in role evolution. By 1981, Kareem was Lakers' patriarch. Bob was humbled superstar-seeking championship lifeline. Their partnership was contrasting big man play. Kareem operated as the anchor, the low-post fulcrum around which everything revolved. Bob, coming off bench, provided perimeter scoring bursts. When together, Bob's 15-footer drew defenders away, clearing lanes for Kareem to operate. Conversely, Kareem's gravity allowed Bob to dash to rim without meeting a rim protector. Bob's admiration grew witnessing daily discipline required to maintain Kareem's late 30s performance. The yoga, the diet, the mental preparation, rivals turned teammates. A complete professional relationship, from fear and respect of a rival to camaraderie and gratitude of a teammate. Between 1972 and 76, they monopolized the league's offensive output. In the 70s, they were combatants. By 1982, they shared champagne. Bob's reverence is rooted in gratitude. Kareem's longevity validated Bob's struggle to remain relevant. Seeing Kareem dominate at 38 gave Bob the blueprint to contribute meaningfully into his mid-30s. Bob emphasizes Kareem's class. When the NBA battled reputation for drug abuse and disorganization, Kareem stood as a dignity pillar, an intellectual, an activist, a consummate professional. For Bob, who valued classy people like Arthur Ashe, Kareem was the basketball equivalent, a man who let excellence speak for itself. These are the 5 essential pillars of what Bob respects most in basketball and in life. The validation of positionless basketball, the idea that skill supersedes defined roles and traditional boundaries, the rehabilitation of the 6th man role, transforming it from perceived demotion to tactical necessity for winning championships. The bridge between 70s and 80s basketball, raw talent of one era combined with the discipline and structure of another. The class metric as a defense of dignity. These five are mirrors in which Bob's own greatness is clearly reflected. They are teammates who embraced him, coaches who directed him, and rivals who pushed him to be better. In their reflection, we see Bob not as just a scorer, not as just a stats machine, but as a true connoisseur of basketball's highest arts. A genuine hoopstorian, a legend who finally found peace among giants. This list is a powerful rebuke to history erasure and dismissal. It reminds us that before the three-point revolution changed everything, giants walked the earth. Men who could hook from 15 feet with precision and touch, pass through a keyhole with perfect touch and vision, glide from the free throw line with elegance, drop step through double teams with advanced footwork. Bob McAdoo was one of them. His 5 favorites are the company he keeps in the exclusive Immortals Club. If this story resonated deeply with you and moved you like this video, subscribe for more old-school basketball greatness and legendary stories. And comment which of these 5 picks surprised you the most. These stories truly matter deeply to understand basketball history. This history matters. Bob McAdoo's entire incredible journey, from completely forgotten to finally recognized and validated, matters profoundly. That is the real and lasting victory that transcends all championships.